Welcome to Clock Combos. It is a beautiful Friday afternoon in Puerto Rico. We're super excited about this episode. We're going to be joined by Jimmy DeCicco, the CEO and oldest brother of Super Coffee, in just a few minutes.
Grab a drink, White Claw, Super Coffee, beverage of choice, and let's get started.
Hey guys, this is Sheila and Maya Dunn, and you're listening to Clock Combos. How are you?
I'm good. I'm sorry it took 90 emails to set this up, but appreciate you guys following up.
No, we appreciate you taking the time, and I'm sure you're super busy. Thanks so much for doing this. But
yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for doing it.
We were joking, like we should have renamed it Coffee Combos and like asked Jimmy for a Super Coffee sponsorship.
There you go. Hey, I'm in. Count me in. I got my Super Coffee handy. Well, cool. Yeah, sounds good. Nothing's off limits. We could go wherever you guys want with this.
Awesome. Sounds good. So I guess to start us off, welcome to Clock Combos. We'd love to just have you tell us like how your 2020 went, what you've been up to. I mean, we know you and have been following you, but for our audience, like kind of what you're doing now and how your year's going.
Yeah. So 2020 was an interesting year for everybody, right? Especially the bottled coffee industry. What happened was once COVID hit in March of last year with the lockdowns, there was a lot of foot traffic that slowed down, especially in like C-stores and gas stations. There was just less people on the go. So the bottled coffee category as a whole lost 7 million customers in 2020. But the good news is the people who stayed were truly the loyalists. So they ended up spending more money on coffee. So what we found was even though there was less people going into grocery stores, they were spending more when they went. So less foot traffic, higher basket ring. So we actually had a good year. We doubled our sales in 2020. We grew our team by 20%. We burned a little bit more money than we planned to, but we made a commitment to our team that we would come out of this thing stronger than when we went into it. I think when we said that last March, little did we know how long this was actually going to last. But hopefully, I mean, we're here in February now. I think with vaccines being administered and distributed, I think we're on the downhill of this whole thing. I hope.
Yeah, awesome. That's awesome to hear. I mean, we've been doing this podcast talking to like even Andy and Will's other mentors. They all kind of say the same thing with COVID, like the CEOs that are able to, go through something like COVID and come out of it are going to be the really stable companies. That at least that's what we've been hearing a lot of trends towards. So, yeah.
With that, Andy Grove, he's got a great quote. Andy Grove was the CEO of Intel back in the day, and he said, bad companies are destroyed by crises. Good companies survive crises, and great companies are improved by crises. So I think with this COVID pandemic, it's a true leadership challenge for anybody who's running a company, big or small, right now.
Yeah, I'm reading a Mark Manson book right now, but it's everything is fucked, but it's about like anti-fragility and like getting stronger in times of despair and crisis.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love Mark Manson.
So talking a little bit about, you guys doubled sales in 2020, looking ahead in 2021 and beyond. I've watched some of your interviews and just talking about goal setting. And we talked about this with Andy Greenfield, just like, how do you know you've arrived, or will you ever feel like you've, arrived or made it? And kind of what are your goals with Super Coffee in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think we always have to be curious. We always have to be learning. For me, I definitely have a lot of insecurities, a lot of fear, almost an imposter syndrome. Like, oh man, the business is getting bigger. Like, who am I to be running this company? And I think that, I mean, as anxious as that makes me feel, it's also what drives us forward. I think the moment you get complacent is the moment you lose your edge, and the moment that a competitor comes up behind you, or your business doesn't grow the way that it should. And there is no finish line, right? There is no arrival to this thing. It's like, I mean, we could acquire Coca-Cola, and we'd still not have arrived. So for us, life is a constant learning process. One of our core values is curiosity, and it's just the ability to evolve and seeking better ways to do things and learning with the times. I mean, no, obviously the pandemic is new rules of engagement for everybody. So you have to adapt and adjust on the fly, but also with this sort of rise of technology and social media and new apps, like we're operating today very differently than companies operated 5 years ago, so we have to learn and evolve. So I feel like we're learning every day. I feel like I know not a lot more now than I did 5 years ago when we started Super Coffee, but I feel like we're just getting started.
Yeah, you mentioned imposter syndrome, and what is it like to be 27, 28, young CEO in charge of a $200 million plus dollar company? How do you overcome that imposter syndrome? I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to, is like feeling that sense of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm squirming in my chair just because it makes me uncomfortable to hear you guys say that. It's cool, there's a lot of responsibility. I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do, which is cool. It doesn't make it any easier. But I think the bigger it gets, the more people we work with, both on our full-time staff and our investors and partners and distributors, I think the more accountable we are to them. Like I'm afraid of not letting our team down. And that fear is what drives me. It helps me focus. It helps me prepare. It helps me really get the resources we need to continue to grow. But I think what I would say to myself 5 years ago is like, I mean, you guys probably have this experience too, looking up at CEOs who run big companies. You're like, holy shit, that guy must have something that I don't have, right? Or that person must be made differently than I'm made because they're doing something that's pretty amazing. Like that's how I felt when we first started Super Coffee. Never did I think we'd get to 100 million in sales, all over the country, some awesome partnerships along the way. But I guess what I'd say to that kid is like, look, dude, you got the same thing that everybody else has. They're not any different than you. They bleed the same blood, they drink the same water and breathe the same air. So I think just having confidence in yourself and not being afraid to try something new. Like when I'm scared, that's when I know that I'm growing.
Have you, I think, Sheila, the first meeting you had with Jimmy would have been in like 2018, I don't know, but I think I met you in person in 2019. Since like in the past 2 years, have you felt the responsibility on you is more intense, like as the company's grown, or has it kind of always been there, that same responsibility, not letting people down, since day one?
Yeah, so I have two awesome co-founders and my brothers, right? So the three of us really bear a lot of that burden and responsibility. But I think anytime your title is CEO, good, bad, or indifferent, the pressure is going to fall on you. So like if I mean, it shouldn't work this way, but like if we hit our goals and if we get awards and accolades, like the CEO gets the compliments. Obviously I defer those to our team because it would be impossible to do what we're doing without an awesome team around us. But same thing, if you mess up, if somebody bad says something about your company, or if one of your employees steps out of line, that's your fault. You could have nothing to do with it, and that's your fault because you're the CEO. So I mean, there's certainly pressure, but I have an awesome support system. I never feel alone. I never feel like I have to carry that burden by myself.
With that pressure, one of our earlier episodes too was all about mental health, and there's like the CEO never has a day off. Do you ever let yourself kind of relax? Are you able to have an unproductive Sunday ever? Kind of how do you separate the two? Because I personally have a hard time allowing myself to, watch a movie or feel lazy because I know there's so much to do always.
Yeah, I feel you. And it's hard. It's hard for me to separate the two. But at the same time, like I love what I do. So it's not like I feel shackled to a job or grinding like on something that I don't enjoy. So I do find fulfillment and enjoyment in the work that I do. But at the same time, like it is work, it could be the coolest job in the world, but it's still work, So what I found is like, even if I wasn't working so much on a startup, I still need to be doing things. So like, yeah, there's an occasional Sunday where I might sleep in or watch a couple of shows on Netflix, whatever. Like that happens. But I also like to be out and about. I just joined an archery club, so I'll go shoot arrows on a Sunday and go off-roading. Like I like to do stuff that I enjoy, and I always find time for that. fitness, I work out every day. Like that's a big part of my lifestyle. So yeah, you just got to find the stuff that you enjoy. And I think to your point, like I do feel guilty sometimes if I were to take that time to myself. But that's okay. It's like you will be a better teammate if you take that time to yourself.
This is an interesting question kind of for me as I'm working with my brother, but how has it been for you having your two co-founders being your brothers? Has it been like tough or always smooth sailing?
I think it's a big advantage. I think for like a lot of people see that I work with my brothers and like, oh man, I could never do that. I'd kill my brother. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you feel that way because you sort of you're very close to each other our whole lives. I mean, even now we live together, we work together, we work out together, we go on vacation together. Like it's a lot of togetherness, but at the same time, we got each other's backs. At the end of the day, work, if this works, if it doesn't work, if the business goes under, whatever, we're still family. We don't want to let each other down. We trust each other. There's a great chemistry there. Jake and I played football together, so like he and I were always on the same page. I was a quarterback, he was a wide receiver. So I think we have a lot of advantages that other founders don't have. Jake, Jordan, and I, we've been working together for 25 years, and Jordan's 25 years old.
Right. Are your parents? Do you have any other siblings? I wasn't sure. Is it just the three of you?
No, that'd be strange, right? If we had like a fourth brother who was just like doing a desk job somewhere. Just the three of us.
Are your parents like, holy shit, what's happened in the last like 5 years? Just so proud.
Yeah, I mean, they're our big supporters. They're super competitive. They both played sports in college too. They don't know what the hell we're doing, right? At this point, they're like, keep going. You guys are doing great. They're super excited, but like they couldn't really give us advice.
Awesome.
Do you find, this is sort of a side question too, but do you find that the research on birth order is kind of true for you guys in the sense of like older, middle, youngest? Are some of those maybe stereotypes true for you guys, or do you contradict some of those?
Yeah, no, it's good. I think definitely true for us. I always find that the youngest sibling is usually like the most rebellious and creative. Like Jordan dropped out of school to start a coffee company. Like that's not me at all. I think I'm the most sort of parental of us. Like I'm like the patriarch of the brothers. But that's just because I felt obligated to raise my two little brothers as like growing up. So like I assumed that role as leader of the family. Jake's in the middle, just happy-go-lucky, just keeping everybody happy. Best friends with Jordan, best friends with me, but like only the middle brother can have that relationship. One thing I will say that I've noticed over the last couple of years is like our roles are very different in life. Like I'm an outdoorsman, I'm independent. I like going to do the things that I like to do, hunting, camping, that type of thing. And because I was already in that role, like Jake didn't want to be the second person in that role. So he's very different. He loves the city, he loves to travel, he likes Miami and fancy food and all kinds of stuff. And it's great. We're just different, but you would think coming from the same family, we're more similar. And maybe to the outside world we are, but inside this family, we're very different.
Yeah, we find that too. So there's 6 of us total. And I think, yeah, me and Maya are the youngest too. And we have 3 older brothers and an older sister. So 3 and 3. But everyone has like core similar principles or, some personality traits the same, but then each person's got their own like unique interests. So one thing going back to what you said about, 5 years ago, what you would tell yourself, something else that I was watching and I heard you say kind of startup years are like dog years. So how you've just matured over the past 5 years, way more than if you would have, and maybe if you continue to work in finance or something like that. I think I met Jordan on a trip to New York City in 2017. He was living in the We Live, We Work. But even, that's what, 4 years ago. How has your life changed? I mean, besides the obvious, are there little things that you've learned that are matured like that a typical 28, 29-year-old might not have experienced?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it makes for an awkward social environment right now. Like I love my friends and I mean, it's unfair to girlfriends, but like I don't have a lot in common with other 28-year-olds, and I don't mean that like pretentiously or anything, but like I've had to hire and fire grown men, people who are older than my parents. And I think you go through some experiences like that, whether it's negotiating a contract with a stodgy old distributor or signing a new factory or we've raised $60 million from hundreds of investors, and that's a lot of, you learn about negotiating, you learn about human skills. It's really all just behaviorism. And I think it almost makes you callous in a way. Like you have to stay true to yourself. You have to stay positive and optimistic and all that. But like, business is a zero-sum game in a lot of these negotiations. And like, I think that's the biggest growth that I've had is like in the early days, I was like, oh, I want to work with everybody. And like, why can't this be great? Like, let's sign contracts that benefit both of us. And I really quickly realized the world doesn't work that way. So yeah, you I don't want to say you become a skeptic, but you sort of see people's tricks a lot easier. And I don't know, I think I wouldn't have changed the last 5 years at all, but I definitely feel older than I am.
Is there anything you think that you can't accomplish or can't do?
Oh, I think I can't arbitrarily say I'm going to go do that because I want to. I think it has to be something that I'm actually something that I gravitate towards, and that's what passion is. Like passion, like at Colgate, I wasn't a great student. I studied philosophy because it was interesting to me. But at Super Coffee, like I can learn really quick, and like I grasp concepts pretty quickly. And I'm like, I never really knew that about myself, but to me, that's a symbol of like, hey, you're doing something that you enjoy doing, you're genuinely curious about this. So I would say curiosity is key. Like if you're authentically curious about a topic or about a challenge, there's nothing you can't do. But if you were like, hey, Jimmy, go run 100 miles because I told you to, it's like, probably not going to do that. Right. But if I wanted to, I could figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah, I love that.
Did you always think or like looking back, do you always think that you were kind of born to be an entrepreneur in like a business space?
Yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship and leadership go hand in hand. Like I never really knew, like I didn't even know the word entrepreneurship growing up. I wasn't involved in it. My mom worked at the YMCA. Our dad was a construction worker. So like, it wasn't part of our dreams or vision to start our own companies. But like looking back, I was always like the captain of the sports team or the president of the class, and not to be like a teacher's pet, but that's because what I like to do. I like to lead people. I like to solve problems. And I think that background and that curiosity sort of lent itself to be a startup CEO. I don't do well in like process oriented regimented stuff. Like I think I would have been terrible in the military.
Switching gears a little bit. So, coming into the coffee space, extremely competitive, saturated market, marketing and branding is everything. It's really critical along with a really great product. But how did you, the Super Coffee brand is extremely strong, and I've heard a little bit of the background of kind of, the slash and, now that you're in, is it 20,000 stores worldwide?
I think it's a little bit more than that now.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're up to 50,000 now,
50,000.
which is crazy. Yeah, just nationwide. Thankfully, we're still only in the U.S. We got the rest of the world yet to learn about.
Dominate.
That's right. I was going to say conquer, but I don't know if I can say conquer the world these days.
But kind of the question, I guess, would be, how did you go about your marketing strategy, and how do you stand out in a world where that's so, it's very competitive to get into, the food and beverage industry?
Yeah, I mean, our strategy is a simple one. It's just not an easy one, right? Like the people who show up and put in the work and stock the shelves are going to do better than the people who don't. I think a lot of flaws that startup food and beverage companies make is like they get an authorization at a Whole Foods or a Walmart or a Target, meaning they're allowed to sell their product in those stores. It gets put on the shelf. But if they're not in there supporting it, it's not going to sell. You could have the best tasting product at the best price and the best packaging, but if you don't have a motivated team in there building shelf space, end caps, displays, the whole deal, it's not going to do it. So I think for us, like working hard and being nice to people is a big part of our culture. The product has to taste good. That's table stakes. It's got to be healthy. In this day and age, you can't really make coffee with milk and sugar anymore. So the product has to be different enough. Like you're not going to win if you're doing something that somebody else is already doing. And then marketing, I think, just truly be authentic. There's no campaigns that people can do. Like I can't pay an athlete to say nice things about Super Coffee. Like customers are smart and they see right through that shit. So it's really got to be authentic. It's got to be meaningful. And I think that's why Super Coffee is working right now, because we hire people who are a reflection of the brand, or rather a brand is a reflection of the people we work with. So it's pretty authentic on how we sell and go to market.
With the idea of team, when was your first like real hire? Obviously you had the three brothers, and then when did you hire like the first full-time Super Coffee teammate?
So the first employee started with us in, I want to say March or April of 2017. So like Jake Jordan and I really started in September of 2015. So almost 2 full years. And that's a funny story. We didn't know what we needed in an employee. Like I didn't know what interview questions to ask. Like back then it was just me, Jake, and Jordan making product by hand, making deliveries in this crappy van that my dad helped retrofit with a cooler. Like we were just working our asses off. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know who to hire. And this guy came up to us. He was our age. He just graduated from Virginia Tech, and he was working for the government down in DC. He was like, "Hey, I love what you're doing. This is really interesting to me. Like, I want to work with you guys." And again, I didn't know what to ask him. He certainly didn't have experience in what we did. So all I knew is what we did was very difficult. Like it was hard. So I was like, "All right, man, if you want to do this, meet me at this trail in the woods at 5 a.m. on Saturday morning." And the fucking kid showed up. So he showed up and we just ran. I was like, "Bring your sneakers." We just ran through the woods like psychopaths for like 6 miles. And all I wanted to see if he was going to quit, and he didn't quit. It was super hard. I think he sprained his ankle at one point. Dude just kept going. And I'm like, "All right, you got the job. Like this shit's hard. That's all I know. And let's play ball." I think I'd get fired if I did that today, but proud to say that employee, Mr. Ray Clatterbuck, is still with us. He's our first employee, and he'll be celebrating 4 years this year.
Wow. That's what I was going to ask. Yeah. What's he up to now? That's amazing. A couple other questions I have. We kind of talked about kind of advice. We asked as cliche of a question, but advice to your younger self 5 years ago. What would you tell that person if you could say anything?
I think you got this, like believe in yourself. You're good to go. You have what it takes. It may not seem like it, but just take it one day at a time, solve one problem at a time. Like you're not going to know everything at once. I think back then I was super overwhelmed with like not having the knowledge that I have today, but the only way that comes is through 5 years of doing it.
I have a question that's actually more out of curiosity, because Sally Sellers, considering fundraising, is like, when did you make that decision to raise money, and what were kind of the reasons behind it?
We raised money before we got started. So like we didn't have any money to start with. So we had to buy bottles and labels and coffee and protein and stuff like that. So we raised from our 2 aunts. They believed in what we were doing. They tasted the product out of my brother's blender, and they said, "Look, here's 30 grand. We believe in you guys, and if this doesn't work, we still love you." And we're like, "All right, shit, let's do it." So we turned 30 grand into 100,000 in sales. Then we went out and we raised 100,000. We turned that into 500,000 in sales. And I mean, I think the key to fundraising is taking what you can get when you can get it, but also doing what you say you're going to do with that money, right? Because the moment the fundraising becomes very easy once you hit your goals, right? But the moment you miss is the moment you're going to have a tough time convincing people to believe in you.
Kind of on that note with finance. So I know you mentioned your background at Colgate was philosophy, and then you were working on Wall Street your first year out of college. How did that happen? Did you always know you wanted to work on Wall Street?
No, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was a passionate networker. So Colgate's got an awesome network. And while I was playing football, I was sending emails to all these football alums, just giving them updates on the season and the games and the scouting report and all that. And this one guy was reading my emails for 3 years, and he ended up giving me a job, my first job in commercial real estate finance in New York City. awesome gig. And I think for me, like knowing I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was like, this is a job where if I do well, I can make a lot of money, and I'm like, that seems like a good default. It was totally the wrong choice. But yeah, I think networking, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to have that background in the world of business is so important too. Finance kind of
Yeah.
understanding. Yeah.
I had no fucking idea what I was doing, but it looks great on a resume.
We wanted to do a rapid fire round.
We'll see how this goes. This is our first time adding this in.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay, so beer or wine?
Beer.
Nonfiction or fiction books?
Fiction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's surprising. EQ or IQ?
EQ.
Music or podcasts?
Music.
Morning person or night owl?
Morning. Early mornings.
Austin, Texas or New York City?
Austin, Texas, baby.
This one might be outdated when the episode's released, but the Kansas City Chiefs or Tampa Bay Bucks?
Let's go, Tom Brady, the GOAT.
Skiing or snowboarding, or neither?
Snowboarding.
Instagram or Facebook?
Instagram. Come on, Facebook still exists.
This might be a stupid one. Tea or coffee?
Oh, I don't drink enough tea, but that's got to be coffee. I drink too much coffee.
Awesome. I think that was all of them.
Awesome. All right, well, we're just out of time here. We want to say thanks so much for doing this, and also congrats on all the success. Jim was also both Sheila and I's mentors in the Colgate Thought into Action group that we always talk about on this podcast. So it's been a really good connection and watching him and learning from him. So thanks for being here again.
Yeah, girls, you guys are awesome. Maya and Sheila, thank you for having me. Let's stay connected. I'm excited for Valet Seller. I'm excited for what's next. And please keep me posted. Keep me updated. Thanks for having me.
Will do. Thanks, Jim. Have a good week.
Cool. You too. Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys, so much for watching. We're going to be releasing episodes weekly, and we're trying to hit the bar. So we're going to peace out. Be sure to like, subscribe, all the other things, all the social medias, comment, share, retweet, copy, paste link. Isn't that the TikTok thing? Just full send it. Get it done. Get it done. Get us some likes, guys. Hope you guys enjoy.